All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Gorowski, and I'll be your host for today. We've got a lot of stuff going on in November, but I'm really excited about one theme in particular, and that is exploring our green planet. So this is the first time we've dedicated a chunk of a month to this, and it's, high time that we're doing it because I think we all get caught up in the big, large, charismatic wildlife that we can see and move at a similar pace to what we do, but we ignore the world of plants, which is just as exciting as our world, but it's just moves at a little bit slower scale. So there's still plants defending themselves and growing, taking over space and finding food. It's just at a little slower pace. So we're going to talk to scientists, explorers, conservationists around the world who are studying plants, exploring plants, bringing them to the front of our discussion where they should be. As we know, they're the primary producers, pretty much the base of every food chain. So they're pretty darn important. So we kicked it off this morning. We had a live event from Eden Project in the UK. You can find that on our YouTube channel if you want to check it out. It's the world's largest indoor rainforest in Cornwall in the United Kingdom. And we had a great tour with Robbie and Tom. We got to see all kinds of cool plants, see some really interesting adaptations, all inside of their beautiful rainforest biome. So today, or this afternoon, I guess, we are going to talk a little bit more about why plants matter to you, to me, and, well, everybody. So we have Maria Fadiman joining us today. She is an ethnobotanist and a National Geographic explorer. She works with people and plants all over the world. So it's pulled her to places like the Amazon, Africa, and Tibet. And, we all use plants. They're all around us. They're important to our life. And we're going to talk a little bit more just how much they matter. I'm going to bring Maria in with us from Florida right now. Maria, how you doing?
I am doing really well. I'm excited for this.
All right. Well, it's great to have you with us. We've definitely done some events together in the past. I think one time we even had you and Kenny Broad and Jill Heinerth in the Bahamas with us with one of our satellite units. Yeah.
We'll see a little moment of the Bahamas today.
Excellent. I love it. Well, we've got a great group of classrooms with us today. Some are tuning in via the YouTube live stream. We've got 5 classes hanging out backstage. In fact, let me just quickly, if you guys want to give a wave, if you're back there with us, give a big wave. There's some of the group hanging out back there.
Yay!
Very cool.
Hi, y'all.
We are coming your way later for some Kahoot, for some Q&A action. Maria, let's get into it. Plants, why do they matter?
All right, here we go. Okay, so talking about why plants matter to you, all of you out there, why they matter to me and to everybody. So we're going to look at this globally and then bring it back home. So here's somebody clearly sitting amongst the plants. This is Cristobal, and we're out in the rainforest. So we're going to start in the Amazon. And when people say that I'm an ethnobotanist, they go, oh, wow, they're like, what on earth does that mean? So starting off in the rainforest in the Amazon, what is ethnobotany? So ethno, that means people, and plants. That's where the botany comes in. So it's the relationship between people and plants. And this can take all kinds of form. This could be fiber, like maybe the clothes you're wearing are made of cotton, or food. If you think about, what did I eat for breakfast this morning? Did you have a piece of bread? Well, that's wheat. Did you have a glass of orange juice? That would be citrus. Construction, even though we can't see it, most of our houses have wood that at least was part of the initial making. Medicine. We look in our medicine cabinet, there are going to be things that came from plants. So aspirin, originally, it came from a tree, and that's a pretty famous one. And ritualistic uses. We think, well, what do we use as a ritual? Like, so we're out in the rainforest. We think, oh, far away stuff that has to happen in the Amazon. No, we do ritualistic stuff here too. If we think we just had something that was at the end of October, and most of us did it. We had a big orange round plant. This is what a pumpkin, right? We all know what we do with it. We carved it, and we put a candle in it, and we put it outside our house. We looked up and down the street, and everybody had them glowing. So that's a pretty ritualistic use. And if I said, you know what, this year, I'm not going to do a pumpkin. I'm going to do a snake, and I'm going to use a zucchini. What? You can't use a zucchini. So I work in the rainforest. I could do a snake, but I'm not a zucchini because a pumpkin is what we do. So we're very connected to certain plants. And then there's some uses, and it's just hard to categorize them. So I do a lot of work in the rainforest, and often I'll work with a family, and they'll give me a little gift when I leave. So once I got a banana, once I got a little egg, and then there was a family I had worked with for a long time. And they said, Maria, we have something really special for you. I was like, ooh. And they came out holding a duck. Quack, quack, quack. I was like, what am I going to do with the duck? I'm working at a biological station. But I said, oh, thank you so much. I appreciate the duck. They said, oh, of course. And so I walked through the trees with the duck for just a little while. But then Don Felipe, who was leading me to the villages, he said, we both knew I couldn't carry this duck through the mud. So he said, and he picked a leaf, and he picked a vine, and he wrapped up the duck, and he hooked it on the back of his backpack. So for 8 hours, I was face to face with this duck. The duck, but that's the duck, and that's ethnobotany. That's a person using plants, in this case, to wrap up a duck. And then there are plants that are just super common that we're really used to, United States and Canada, but it comes from Latin America. And this is something we eat. We also use it as a sweetener. This is corn. So I was living in Mexico, and I was living, and in the house there was the grandmother. And so you see her there, and she is taking corn, and she used to take the corn cobs, the dry ones, and she'd rub them together, and the corn would trickle down into this big area on the ground. And then she would take that to the tortilleria to make tortillas. But if you'll notice, there is somebody who is hiding behind there. And when the grandmother walked away, wow, he jumped into the corn. I think that looks kind of fun. But that could be considered another use of plants. So when I first got to the rainforest, they told me be wary of the snakes, be careful. Don't touch under anything because they're scorpions. And they said, spiders are everywhere. So I was like, ooh. So the first night I walked to my bed and I looked with my flashlight into my sleeping bag. And I was like, ooh, hope nothing's in there. And I got in and I thought, I think I hate this. I'm so scared of all of these things. But then the longer I was there, I began to learn the forest and the animals, and the birds and the snakes. All of this came together to form this incredible ecosystem, which is the rainforest. And now I've been working there just for over 30 years, and I love it. But I also realized that it was the people who were there, and they were teaching me their knowledge, and that people are part of this system. And that's when I really got that it's not just the plants, it's the plants and the people that are working together. And I wanted to see how that played out. Now, didn't mean there weren't still things I was scared of. So when a spider is big and hairy, we call it tarantula. And tarantulas, spiders are all part of the ecosystem, but they scare me. But this one plopped down, and we all like, oh! But then we remembered, like, we're scientists, we're cool, we like this. And so we all started to take pictures. But there's something that you do when you're taking a picture of something out in the field. You want something that's called to scale, something of a known dimension so you can put it next to the specimen, and then you'll know how big it is. So we said, how about a pencil, right? We know how big a pencil is. So we put the pencil next to the tarantula, we'll know how big the tarantula is. So someone handed me the pencil, and they said, you put the pencil by the tarantula. And I said, well, I'm not doing that. I said, you do it. So we all did this. Finally, I said, I took the pencil, and I threw the pencil near to the tarantula, and poof, she pounced on it, pencil attack. And we all went, oh. And then we remembered, no, we're cool, we're researchers. And so we took our pictures. But then what was the next question? Who is going to get the pencil back? And I'm just going to let you know that you're not supposed to do this, but we left the pencil there, and we just walked away because we were too scared. But looking at this rainforest, now that I felt comfortable in the ways we connect with plants, it comes in all kinds of forms. So we talked about a lot of those physical uses, but there's also other ways. I was working with the indigenous group, the Shuar, and we were in the forest, and they said, come up to this tree. They call it a ceiba tree. And we stood in these huge roots, and they said, look up. And they said, the ceiba brings you home. And I thought, I don't know what that means. And he said, well, if you're lost in the forest, you just stand in the roots, and the tree will help you remember your way home. So this is really cultural importance, this tree, and we'll talk about that. And what we were standing in are called buttress roots. These huge, tall roots. So buttress roots are super big, and just to let you see how big they are, there I am. Wow! I mean, those roots are bigger than I am. They're like these walls. And you think, well, why do you need those big, crazy roots in the rainforest? The soil is actually really shallow. It doesn't go very deep, the good soil. So you've got all this stuff growing, and you've got this huge, tall tree. So it actually has these big roots that buttress it up, and it helps it stay up without having very deep roots, because it's all above ground. Most of it is above ground in the rainforest. So one of the things I work with is how do we keep the trees alive themselves, and how do we keep the knowledge, what people know about the trees that make them want to conserve them. So we're going to be leaving the rainforest, and we're going to use an example in the Bahamas. And so this is what Joe was talking about, that we did a broadcast from here. So we're in Abaco, Bahamas, and so we're working with students. A lot of them are around your age, and you can see they're all rubbing leaves on themselves. You think, what? This is the soap leaf. So they're all learning how you can get clean, rubbing leaves on yourself. And you can see they're doing it and they're rubbing. But some people were less into it. They were very into it. And some were a little dubious about what we were doing. But eventually, everybody rubbed the leaves. So another example, just looking at why trees are so important. So one is for habitat. So this is Gombe National Park in Tanzania, Africa. And one of the things that's very interesting about this area, it's where Jane Goodall, where she was working with the chimpanzees. And actually in the intro, there was a picture of Jane Goodall. She's wonderful, she's famous. And so we were working in her area. And really, when Joe was talking about it, it's so easy to be excited about the big animals. Well, the big animals need a place to live. And that's so important where plants play a role. So we were working in a village called Bubongo. So we were over the hill, but we were walking around in Gombe National Park because it's got similar trees and ecosystem, and it also has something really important that lives there, which is part of why it was important working with the village. So we are hiking through here and we're looking for chimpanzees. And we are hiking up these hills, down these hills, and it's hours. And it's hours, and then it's another hour, and I'm so thirsty and I'm so tired, and I'm thinking, I don't even care if I see a chimp. I just want to go back. I'm tired. And then about a half an hour after that, 14 big furry animals come walking out, and I can't believe I didn't care if I saw a chimp. I mean, I just get the chills now thinking about it. These beautiful beings, and she turned. And this one looked at me. And they had said to us, now you can't approach the chimps. But if a chimp comes up to you, that's okay. And she looked up, and then she looked at me. And she started to walk towards me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I am the chimp whisperer. Oh my gosh. And she leaned down and she picked up a rock and she threw it at my head. I was like, blah. So they said, oh yeah, don't look them in the eyes. They don't like that. I was like, okay. So I might stick with plants, but we can see the chimpanzees can only be where they are if the plants are intact. So looking at the concept of protecting the habitat, but you also want to protect the plants for how people use them. They go together. So this was a project that we were doing in Tanzania, and we wanted something that would last, something that was important that it stayed around. And why was that important? Because there's a saying that when an elder dies, a library burns. So you think, okay, what does that mean? Basically, when someone who's accumulated a lot of knowledge, when they die, that knowledge dies with them. unless you save it. So we were like, we'll build a library. But really, that's a lot of work. So we're like, all right, we're going to make a booklet. So what we were doing, and this was with Grace Gabo, another National Geographic explorer, is looking at what plants were important to them and writing it down. So one plant that's a big deal out there is the baobab. And actually behind Joe, it looked like there was a baobab in his background as well. These huge, incredible trees. And just to get a sense of the size, so this is a baobab and it's huge, huge, huge. And then you think, oh, there I am. So just to give you a sense of the size. And I was with someone and they said they were a healer. And we went into a hut and there was a woman holding a crying child. And the healer looked at me and he said, it's like, we're going to go to the baobab. And so we're going to the baobab. He said, this is important. And he pulled the bark, which is very fibrous, and he wove it into a braid, and he tied that around the child's neck. And he said, the baobab will cure this child. So again, that's a medicinal cultural connection that's really important to people, and that importance would give people a reason to want to protect this tree. But there are other reasons too. So here's another baobab, but if you notice, it's got something called honey spikes. It's got these little spikes going up the tree. Why do they call them honey spikes? Because when you climb up the tree, they're gathering honey where the bees make honey in the baobab tree. So then I go, who's doing that? And these are the Hadza. So this is a group living in Tanzania, Africa. They are mostly hunters and gatherers. And so what they've gathered, the baobab has a fruit. And they are taking the seeds and they're grinding the seeds to make a flour. But outside of the seeds, you have the flesh of the fruit. And you can see it gets pretty messy and get all over you when you're eating it. But so they're using just the physical aspects of the tree to eat it. And you can see even the little kids, they're trying to lick the last little bits of the baobab fruit from the bottom of the pail. So kids are into trees too. So then we're thinking, okay, we want to get kids more into this. Let's get them directly connected. Because we saw they were watching us while we would be collecting our plants. They were curious. So we said, okay, let's actually bring them in. So again, these kids are your age, and they were doing the project. And they were the ones who were actively making the booklets. So what we would do is interview, get the information, press the plants, and then we made a booklet of the useful plants, in this case, of the Bobongo community. And a really important part is this is the language of Kiha. That's their local language, the tribal language. And then the next one over, that is in Kiswahili, which more people speak. And lastly, it was English. So it's really important with language, and I bet there's a bunch of you who speak a language in addition to English, and that's really important that we get to express ourselves in more than one way with different languages. So that's really, really special to be able to speak more than one language. So this was the book they made, and you can see everyone's excited and looking at that. And again, we take this beyond the people. These are animals that live there for the habitat, but also they started to look at, well, how are the animals using the plants? And someone started to make a booklet of that. So looking at plants and creatures in the United States, Canada, places that are not so far away, here is a bee, right? So we see that and we know bees are pollinators, so that's super important. And it's on a California poppy. And so I grew up in California, so this is a flower that's really special to me. And this is a huge, tall tree, not in a rainforest. This is a redwood tree, again in California. And we used to go to a summer camp where we literally slept in the trees. So this is really important to me. So we all connect to where we live. So then we each take a moment and think, well, what's an important plant to you? How could you protect it where you live? All right, thank you.
All right, Maria, I'm going to bring that screen share down. We'll get you back nice front and center. Thank you for taking us on a little kind of whirlwind tour of where your studies of plants and people have taken you. Some pretty amazing places around the world and some pretty cool stories. But yeah, it seems every once in a while you have those encounters like the tarantula and the chimpanzee. You got to be careful.
You do. It's fun, but you got to know what you're doing.
All right. Well, while you were presenting, I pulled together a little Kahoot quiz, and we're going to play that with our classrooms. Just a couple questions, kind of based on a little bit of what you shared today. So I am going to share my screen. You need to go to kahoot.it. That is the website, and then it's going to ask you for a PIN number. So once my screen loads, you will see that PIN number coming up for you right about there. We go. Okay, so kahoot.it, and then today's PIN is going to be 96965. Maybe you have Chromebooks or tablets. You can join that way. If not, maybe your teacher could pop this up at the front of the room. You could shout out your answers to him or her. If you can't get connected with technology, that's perfectly fine. You can still play along and see how you do. What else do we have to think about? It's multiple choice, true and false. The quicker you put in the right answer, the more points you're going to get. If you're tuning in via YouTube, say hi in the chat and start putting some questions in so we have some questions ready. And pretty soon, right after the Kahoot, we're going to start visiting our camera classrooms as well. And we're going to get some questions about plants and people and cool places around the world. So I have a question for you. You had the duck. They made that nice little duck carrier for you. Hiked for 8 hours. Where did the duck go from there?
That is a good question. So you saw the person in the picture. It was Don Felipe, who had made it. And we got to the biological station, and I didn't actually have a use for a duck. And so I said, Don Felipe, would you like to take the duck? So he did. But then what happens is they live along the river. So the river is where they get their water for drinking and for washing and for putting in their canoes. And so so he put the duck in the river, and then the duck learned just to come up to his house every night where he would get fed and where they can live, and then go down to the river. So, and actually one of the things that they eat there are duck eggs. So the duck was kept in Don Felipe, so the duck got to stay in the rainforest, but just not with me.
All right.
No question.
Very cool. I imagine there'd be some questions at customs, not only with the duck, but the little leaf container that it was in. Probably would have been tricky to get back home.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, they wouldn't have liked that at the airport much.
All right, very cool. Well, things look like they're starting to slow down. So I think we have a nice group of classes and students in here. So let's play some Kahoot, and then we're going to get into our Q&A action. So here we go. It's going to count us in. Remember, the quicker you get your answer in, the more points you're going to get. And we'll see who finishes in the top of the podium today. So we have multiple choice coming your way. Ethno means, is it plants? Is it animals? Is it people? Or is it ecosystems? So what does that represent? Plants, animals, people, or ecosystems? Got a few more seconds. Oh, there we go. We're wrapped up. Good job, crew. Most went with people. A few went with plants, but you got to add that little botany part to it as well. Then you get the nice ethnobotany. Okay, let's jump to our next question. The Rocky Dolphin is holding down the top spot by 1 point. It's tight. Another quiz question. This one's important. You have to pick multiple answers, as many as you think apply. So click all the ways we use plants. Clothing is an option, medicine, food, construction. You need to pick 2 of them, maybe 3 of them, maybe all 4 of them. But if you want to get the answer right, you have to pick more than 1. So click all the ways we use plants. Clothing, medicine, food, construction. What are you going to click? I put extra time on this one because we don't always do these multi-select ones. We want to make sure classrooms get a chance to pick some answers. But we have 10 seconds left to lock it in. All right, good stuff. We had lots of, well, technically if you picked 1, you were right, but the best answer is all 4 of them. And this is only scratching the surface of some of the ways we use plants all around the world. That puts the bold sphinx into that top spot. We have another true and false coming your way. People aren't part of the rainforest ecosystem. Is that true or is that false? That people aren't part of the rainforest ecosystem. We're separate from it. We're different. Is that true or is that false? Couple more seconds. All right. Good job, crew. That's absolutely false. People are part of the rainforest ecosystem. We humans, we are part of the planet. We're animals. We're part of all the ecosystems that we're hanging out in and existing in. All right. Final question. One more, true or false. Soil in the rainforest is actually real. Well, I should say really. Yeah, rainforest is actually really shallow. True or false? Couple more seconds to lock it in. We'll take a look at our podium, and then I'm coming your way for some question action. All right, absolutely true. So the great example of the buttress roots. And actually, if you joined us today, we saw the banyan tree at Eden Project, and it was a really cool way of growing roots downwards from the branches to stabilize itself and spread out along the rainforest floor. That was pretty cool. Okay, third place, we have the swift chicken. In second place, the cheerful horse. And holding down that top spot, a bold sphinx held on for the last few questions. All right, very cool. Let's stop that music. Thanks for playing along with us, and let's get into our Q&A action. Here we go. So I'm going to start pulling some classrooms in, and we're going to get some classrooms. I'm going to start off with our classroom who has to leave a little bit early. They're a high school class hanging out with us. Let me get them in here front and center. How are we doing, everyone?
We're doing great. Thank you so much for sharing about your exciting adventures. And we
awesome.
Hi, this is a question for you. Plan to go into biology when you
I can't quite.
Yeah, I don't know why the microphone's kind of breaking up a little. Maybe try to get a little closer. But we kind of got every second word.
Okay.
Did you plan to go into the field of ethnobiology, or not ethnobiology, ethnobotany, or was that a pathway you sort of just fell on and decided to?
That's a really good question. And just so you know, a lot of people talk about ethnobotany and ethnobiology. So either one works. So no, this was not what I initially thought I was going to do. I actually started off as an English major in college, and I always loved the outdoors, and I was super interested in how people lived off the land. And it was when I went out to the rainforest, and I actually ended up working as a naturalist guide as a volunteer. But the problem was I didn't know anything about the rainforest. So that was that first night I was excited to go out there. And it was really when I was there, like I said, and the people started to teach me what was happening. I thought, oh my gosh, wait a minute. This is really important. The people are connecting with the plants. And I'd always just thought I want to save the rainforest in some magical way through my English degree. And then when I saw that they really came together, then I began to learn that there was such a thing called ethnobotany, which was really the relationship between people and plants. And that's how I started to go that direction. But it definitely was not what I started off doing. So I also think it's really important people follow your passion, and you never know where you're going to end up.
All right. I think that's great. I know you have to duck out soon, so if you have another question, we'll let you squeeze it in before we go to our next classroom.
Well, we were talking about all the different plants and the different connections, and wondered if, Maria, you had a special or favorite plant connection with people that you've learned on your travels about.
There's so many interesting different plants, but I would say I've actually done a lot of work with palm trees. And I'm from California, but I live in Florida now. Florida has a lot of palm trees. And with a palm tree, you have so we'll use a coconut palm, for example, the coconut. You can eat the coconut. But then when you cut open the coconut and you've got that hard brown shell, you can also then use that as a cup. And then you have the fronds that are growing. So those big green fronds, you can cut those down and you could use those for a roof. And then you've got the little delicate ones that are growing up, and in Spanish they call them a cogollo, the little inner part. And those are really delicate, so you can weave a basket. And then you can tap them and you can get the sago palm juice if that's what you're wanting. So there's just so many things that you can do with the palm tree and in so many ways. So, I mean, I love all plants, but I've done a lot of work with palm trees. That one's particularly useful in lots of different parts of the world.
Awesome. Thank you. And then one more, since we're in California. Where are you from in California?
Oh, I am from the Bay Area.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. We're on the peninsula near San Mateo in Belmont.
oh, well, hi, you guys. Yes, I grew up right near you.
All right, very cool. Well, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for those great questions today. Let's bring another crew in. I see someone standing front and center in Miss Ramos' class. They are hanging out with us. Oh, they're in Florida. They're in Miami. Let me get them in here.
Okay.
How do plants provide medicine?
How do plants provide medicine?
Mhm.
That's a good question. So I'll use aspirin as an example. So there is a willow tree, and in that willow tree, it has some things in its leaves. They're kind of chemicals. They call them alkaloids. And I see the wavers. Hello, everybody. Yay! So in that, there's alkaloids, and these are chemical structure. And sometimes if you bite into something and it's kind of bitter, that may be that chemical, an alkaloid. And what it's made to do for the tree is to prevent things from eating it. However, we have found ways that we actually take that little bit out. And if you use it very carefully, that actually can be turned into medicine. So something that protects the plant, when used carefully and understood, a person could use that to help protect themselves. And so in this case, to lower fever and help with pain. Yeah.
All right. Do we have another class or question there with our third graders? Here comes someone.
Are there specific plants that you have to use for medicine?
Are there specific plants that you have to use for medicine? Yes, there are certain ones. Some of them can be used for medicine. Some of them are not good for medicine. And so what I do is I go out with, if I'm in Latin America, we call them a shaman, or in Africa, we call them a healer. And these are people who know which plants you can use, and they also know how to prepare them. So it's super important that none of us, and me either, go out and try a plant, because we might not know, because plants can be helpful, they can also be harmful. So it's really great to go out with someone who knows the plants, and then they can help teach you which ones you could use for medicine and which ones you want to make sure you stay away from.
All right.
We have one more question.
Go for it.
Wait, go. Just say it loud. Just say it loud.
What kind of trees are used for construction?
What kind of trees are used for construction?
Oh, what kind of trees are used for construction? Well, lots of kinds of trees. So out where I work, a big one, out in the rainforest, a big one would be mahogany. So that's a big tree, and that's got the big buttress roots. But then even trees that we see around, so pine trees are also often used for construction. And there's kind of, they call them hardwoods and softwoods, but many, many trees can be used for construction. And it's one of those things where we always need to think about, okay, we all depend on wood. And so we want to think, well, when we cut a tree down, it's probably a good idea to plant another tree where that one was, so that we can still use the resource, but make sure we don't deplete it, because then we'd have no trees.
Yeah, we had a great example this morning from the Eden Project with bamboo, and they showed a whole skyscraper being made, and the scaffolding was all made of bamboo, whereas we'd use metal here and things like that. So that was pretty cool.
And bamboo is a great example also, and they probably talked about it because it grows so fast. Mm-hmm. So if you have something that grows super quickly, and then you cut it down, you've got another chance that something's going to grow up quickly. So that's something to keep in mind also when you're looking at uses, and bamboo is considered a good, more sustainable kind of wood to use.
All right. Let's head over to Mr. Hancock's crew here in Ontario, in Canada. Let's get them in here, some fourth graders.
Fourth graders. Yeah, the bamboo in my house just keeps growing no matter how much I cut it down.
That's what they do.
One of my students was wondering, what's the most dangerous plant you've encountered?
Oh, the most dangerous plant. Well, there are many plants that are full of poisons, so those you want to stay away from. And I think for me, the most active interaction that I have had with a dangerous plant would be the ones that have the big thorns on them. So, and even there's whole trees in the rainforest, and they've got these huge spikes growing out of them. So one is the Bactris palm, and that has these big long spines coming out, and they are covered in all kinds of germs and that bacteria. And so you have to be careful because it's kind of slippery in the rainforest. Like, oh, you reach out to grab a tree so you don't fall over. And like, whoa! So they say if you're going to fall over in the rainforest, just fall. Don't reach for anything. So the Bactris palm is probably, and I have grabbed it and had them stuck in my hand and it gets infected. So it's actually some of the things that are most dangerous. They're sort of everyday things, but you got to be careful.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, that's good advice. Just fall. Another student was wondering, what is, or have you made any animal or plant discoveries while you've been out there?
So in terms of new discoveries, so it's a good question because some people say, oh, I have a friend and she is looking to find the medicines, like a new medicine that hasn't been discovered. Whereas the research that I do is really looking more to help record what other people already know. And so although it's all new to me, for me, it's about so that they can continue to remember their own knowledge and that for them, then it is never new. It is just always present for them. But that's a good question.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Maria. Thanks, Joe.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Hancock's crew. We're pretty lucky today because we have a second group of students joining us from Miami. So I'm going to bring them in here right now. How are we doing, Avelia's class?
Hi.
Hello, Miami.
Okay, hi, May, come.
I'm right up the road from you guys.
Let me see how we can move the camera. Can we see it? Okay.
There we go.
How does the plants make the clothes?
Oh, how do plants make clothes? Oh, really good question. Okay, so there's different plants that make clothes. So I use the example of cotton. And if you've ever seen cotton growing, which you might not have, it's a plant, and then it has like when you go to the store and you get a cotton ball, it's got a little cotton ball. But what's interesting is that cotton ball is full of little seeds. And that cotton ball in the wind will blow, and that cotton will stick on something, and it releases those seeds, and that's how the cotton plant continues to grow. But that fuzzy part that the cotton plant is just using to transport its seeds, we can use that, and if you pull it out and you twist it, that is going to give you a fiber, and a fiber then turns into a thread, and then with that cotton thread, you could make a shirt. Or there's things like sisal, like if you've ever seen an aloe plant, and it's got it's a bromeliad and these leaves that come out, it's got all of these fibers in there. So also if you remove the outside part, you've already got these long fibers. And those again, and I've been with people and they put it on their leg and they roll it, and that turns it into a fiber, and out of that they can then make clothing. So that's just some examples, but there's lots of ways of flax and other things that we have a lot of clothing that's made out of plants.
All right. Do we have one more question from our crew?
Bastian, you had one?
I had it.
Okay, Bastian.
Where does the redwood tree grow?
Oh, where does the redwood tree grow? So where I live is in Northern California, but it also grows up in Oregon and Washington. It's along the western coast of the United States, and Canada's got to have huge redwoods, I would imagine. So it's along the west coast of North America, and they are these huge, incredible, enormous trees, different than the ones that I see in Florida. And they're pretty special if you ever get a chance to see them. What's so interesting also is they're so big, and this is something that happens in the rainforest too, is they block out a lot of the sun. So underneath, there aren't a lot of things that grow underneath a redwood tree. So it's really kind of this open space with these huge trees, plus their needles fall, and it keeps it a somewhat unique ecosystem.
All right. Very cool. Great questions from our classrooms. Maria, before we say goodbye for today, is there an adventure coming up? Where is your exploration of people and plants going to take you next?
Actually, next I'm going to Costa Rica. So I'm going to go to Costa Rica, actually with the National Geographic group, and we are going to be learning about the botany itself, just the plants, and we're going to do the ethnobotany, the people and plants, and we are going to look at the things that live in the plants. Like we're going to look for monkeys, and toucans, and all of the other things that all go together. So going back to the rainforest.
All right, sounds great. Pretty good spot if you want to find a plant or two in the rainforest. That's awesome. Well, I'm going to start off a huge shout out to our classrooms today. Those who are tuning in via YouTube, those who are hiding out backstage with us. It was great to have you with us. We still have a few of them back there, so I'm going to pop them in just for a second. If you guys want to say a quick goodbye and thank you. All right. Maria, so good to have you with us, taking us into the world of why plants matter. Yeah, I hope you have a great time in Costa Rica, and we can't wait to get back into the world of plants again with you sometime.
Great, thank you. This was really fun to be with everybody. Thanks, you guys, and thanks, Joe, for inviting me. This is great.
All right, thanks, everyone. We're going to sign off for now.
Bye.